Very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. I'll set the F. F sent. So we're dock TOC quarters.
Cool.
Let me know when everyone's good.
Cool. Okay, let me download.
Yeah. Just clear me if necessary.
Cool.
Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
Contention want to shift. The Indo-Pacific is key. That's foreign policy 3-4. China and the Indo-Pacific aggressively expanded naval capabilities to undermine balance of power. Nuclear propulsion allows China Navy to operate longer. Washington require adjustments focusing on unmanned systems. China's ahead now. Trump with 328. China boasts largest Navy. China's shipbuilding capacity many times higher than the U.S. larger fleet. 125 with 28 wars. Affirming Saul's warning E-25. Vessel propelled by SMR catalyst for U.S. shipbuilding. Nuclear would be U.S. secret weapon. We need to invest. Math up nuclear use. Change survival is preferred to guaranteed regime loss. New options are emerging. That's MW 20. Navy's fleet rise to 500 unmanned warships. Significantly cheaper to build and operate nuclear submarines. Viability questionable. Short of major increase in budget. That bridges the gap low. 23. To destroy the Indo-Pacific Navy's force multiplying systems on unmanned vessels, create a network fleet that's more resilient, readily available, produced on shorter timelines. A strong Navy is key. Navy 25. Pacifically disparity empowers China to assert ambitions action met with acquiescent response. Navy must establish a larger presence to manage maritime. The brink is now settled. 23. Top U.S. officials repeated that she will order military action to consolidate even 2025. That causes drawn heat. 22. U.S. China conflict persists for years, fighting conducted through partner nations, non-state groups, Chinese missiles strike throughout Indo-Pacific. See to his umbrellas. The U.S. nuclear umbrella is failing, that's Dodge. 24. Relying on ancient top increasing risk of failure, the United States is less committed to deterrence, plutonium pits, critical to modernization, and NSA currently cannot produce at scale. Modernization efforts are underway. Key 25. Russia rejected new talks, China to little avail, arms control is dead. U.S. in the midst of $1.5 trillion effort upgrades for the nuclear triad. We aren't moving fast enough, spawning. 24. NSA produced warhead ready pit, first time in decades despite difficulties making progress. Quota of 80 per year remains impossible to meet. Investment solves Livermore. 7. Plutonium is linchpin of nuclear energy strategy byproduct from uranium. Engineers find methods to dispose, reduce nuclear waste using proliferation resistant technologies. Production scales up. Gal 25. 450 assets. NSA rated 60% insufficient. Planned explosive infrastructure subject to budgetary constraints. Continue resolutions. Create uncertainty about which projects will be funded. The brink is now broadly. 24. Assuring outlets is imperative for non-proliferation use. Once commitment to modernization, any delay result in risk nuclear capabilities necessary for extended deterrence. Otherwise, proliferations imminent. Spec 317. Japan and South Korea pursue weapons of confidence. U.S. security rose based on China, North Korea, Taiwan, China, Saudi Arabia, seek nuclear arms, tricking increasingly attractive option. Polish already signaled interest. Proxy wars would ensue. Mumford 17. Proxy warfare immune to deterrent nuclear promote. Irregular forms of conflict. Proxy warfare and perceptions of risk involved in direct intervention. It's detrimental to de-escalatory measures. 18. Allied fear abandonment respond by hedging to demonstrate result undercut efforts to prevent escalatory spiral. China believes ally acting on behalf of U.S. heightened risk of war. Moreover, modernization increases arms control cost of 21. Arms control incorporating Russia, China must factor modernization keys, leverage modernization pressure states to participate in negotiations. That's key. NYC 23. Arms control talks avoid nuclear conflict. Of China's expansion is that the U.S. and Russia expand unpredictable points of tension in SCS, Taiwan, Ukraine, nuclear buildup, restricting global crisis. C3 is warming. We aren't solving warming now, that's Crawford. 3.8. Wars on track to be 1.5 Celsius upper limit to avoid climate change. Emission must drop 7.6% per year. Efforts are insufficient. Spisky. 3.4. U.S. leadership to reverse agency stance to greenhouse gases pose a threat, undermining decades of research part of efforts to have funding for climate. Nuclear can scale up, that's REM. 22. Solar and wind renewability problems due to resource limits. Nuclear technology provide 9,000 years of energy. Legacy waste becomes fuel. 3 links. One, either is sold better than renewables, going to 24. Nuclear needs fewer materials and land as wind and solar. Upfront cost made it difficult. Governments need to shoulder high cost, or it complements renewables. Plumber 211. To combat climate change, nuclear power provide consistent electricity. Wind and solar intermittent. Nuclear produces at full power are crucial. Complements renewable solar wind challenges such as overcapacity, price pressure, and slowing demand that solves warming. NPR 22. Renewable power, not nuclear power, to fill the gap between transition to reduce emissions and stave off warming. Second link, it trades up with fossil fuel. Sweden improves. But 15. Nuclear brought online 1972, 1986. Half electrical output came from nuclear emissions, lost by 75%. Most rapid installation in history. Fossil plants dropped 40%, but not with renewables. McKee 22. Renewables did not displace fossil fuels. Infrastructural path dependency insulated fossil fuels from competition. Fossil fuels cause warming. CSRIO. No date. Fossil fuels make larger contribution to climate change. 90% of emissions from burning. It's the most probable extinction threat. McDonald 19. Nuclear wizard based on shaky science and reliable model. Human authorities that nuclear devices. Nuclear war is not an extinction event. Warming is. Third link is it creates international competition. Risky 21. American bolsters drive climate progress. Bring reciprocal form reduction. Every ton of pollution in the United States. Reduce resulted in foreign nations to reduce emissions by 6 tons. Warming turns all impacts carries at 22. Global heating resulted in apocalyptic disaster. Catastrophic even at modest levels played a role in every extinction event. Tipping points for small rise in temperature results in big change in climate trigger cascade. Cause 8 degrees Celsius of warming. Breakdown triggers catastrophic risk, wars, pandemics, crop failures, lack of water. It's scalar. Pierce 23. Every 0.1 degree of warming causes 100 million deaths.
How many sheets is it?
1.
In substance or?
Depends what you mean by substance.
C should be sent depending on whether my hotspot's working. It's working. We know when you get it.
Okay.
All right. Everyone good to go? Great. The energy they transition they imagine as an illusion. Nuclear energy is trapped within global petroculture and its prioritization of utility and efficiency only by positioning our politics and relationships rather than growth can we cross the boundaries of restricted economy. Bosky 21. Solar society serves around the analytical force the other drive to know the world by violently territorializing about nuclear energy has been overtaken by the regime of global petroculture considers solarity generate the access to the sun and the earth. This operation has overtaken the relationship between humans and other species, dramatized by political exchange. The consciousness of life has never been cold. The planet never hot. Every take hold of solarity and look coldly at our economy, but we found what we need to embrace the lens of solarity rather than let it power our future. Their desire to further growth in energy production via nuclear investment is emblematic of the restricted economy's drive to accumulate without expenditure, only grounding our politics in the sun provides a path towards sustainable survival. RFD 22. We receive more energy than we can accommodate because of the success of energy. Even growth cannot exhaust. We receive for no cost and expenditure. Oppose the goals of accumulation and growth of restricted economies, appropriate flows and subordinate them to particular finite ends. The creation of new markets, general economy cannot be an investment. Only pure expenditure where we should be gathered from resource of precision, or else we are inherently solar. Calculative approaches to one environment ignore that non-knowledge is inevitable. The NIC is an attempt to regulate emissions in the closed system, which ignores relational approaches of climate and turns their case. Painter more than 17. Somebody flies in the face of calculated miserliness and embrace of rationality that defies measurement and sustainability wouldn't be better enough for scarcity and cost-benefit analysis. Climate change discourse ignores dimensions and knowledge after an mastery over the plan of regulating emissions within a closed system. The other possibilities of return to live experience, resting ourselves, grasping transformation. We operate within closed systems. Scarcity dictates this calculation logic support production flows. The corporations preoccupied with productive use of scarce resources focus on relationality allows us to live beyond calculation, engaging in excess and to encourage sharing, giving real relating. 3 links from their case. 1. Their focus on cost-benefit is a capitalist method of utility and utilitarian expenditure. The waiver reads green on Plumber 2025. Cost, risk, and waste management challenges, highly secure and costly storage solutions. Solar power in particular have seen dramatic cost reductions, making them increasingly competitive for fossil fuels and energy renewables to reduce reliance on imported fossil fuels, nuclear enabling easier developing cost efficiencies. Then, Lowe's idea that we need to bridge the gap in innovation rooted in ideals of utility. That's a link. The waiver reads blue. To deter if needed, accelerate innovative systems and man vessels created readily available shorter timelines. When he sees preservation and growth advocacy of nuclear energy through REM is exclusionary and solely focused on utility, which only serves to exclude the general economy. The waiver reads green. Advanced nuclear can theoretically provide 9,000 years of renewable energy. Their rejection of expenditure forces excess production to explode violently in war and climate devastation. Modern restricted economic logic locks and perceptions of human nature dualism within fantasies of the earth fighting back against violence, which makes their impacts inevitable. Only through sharing, giving, and taking responsibly can we develop a sustainable future. To Affirmative 20. Restricted economies, when people contemporary restrictive economies are extracted, they have to be confronted by the general economy. We have to learn to extend non-productively and unconsciously attempts to control carbon, only increase mass, only global coordination, deciding not on how much we can take, how much we can give without reciprocation, good work, and violence to the unforeseen can be compared to restrictive violence that excludes what it cannot govern and thus produces an excess that rebels as oppressive from pandemic or climate change or manifestations. The violence of the non-human. There is a tempting image of the human abusing nature that tries to take revenge, addressing nature in terms of range of eradication, transfer solar violence, and language of restricted economy. Earth does not really strike back as facing different humanity. Let's think of the economic models that overcome restrictions of exchange and production and with warfare or climate change. On general economy takes the luxurious character of nature as its starting point and transforms destruction into non-productive expenditure, learning to share because sharing is glorious. It breaks with utility. Vote negative to become solar. See the sun as a comrade, not a resource, and collectively negotiate our position to energy in a sustainable, generous, and thoughtful way. The perm fails. Attempts to shift to a green version of the restricted economy entrenches a constant state of violence in service of growth. Timothy 22. Needs growth, energy, and capabilities to be sick of parasitic capital, learning, point, and development, source of collision between economy and ecology, produce catastrophic side effects of vague, permissive, clean transition, grinding, static capitals, and false consciousness when markets expand, they need more resources, the destruction devastates one area after another. Once we have free energy economies, balloon, using up planet's resources, solar politics, breaks the Promethean circle of relationship, extractivism, the sun is a comrade, liberation of nature cannot be work of nature itself, liberation of nature consists in alienation and creation of alliances between human struggles and generosity, the sun against a greed of capital. The role of the balance of the team who most intensely transgresses the bounds that define the restricted economy. That means expending energy and understanding celerity is limitless rather than scarce. We need this opens up space for new experiences that disrupts traditional comparisons of value and knowledge. Someone in Model 15. The sun pours energy in all directions. Human feel existence overflowing. Restricted economies limit damage, reserve energy, way to persist in general and restricted economies from different ways of acting, experiencing, instead utilitarian values, communities need irreversible ways. General economies and material theory from which binary physicalism have been banished, not a theory, not fully rational because of natural versus not in human scales, and homology specialized like natural science. Nature is governed by laws of human prejudices. Cut the card there. I'm going to continue with the card. But humans celebrate expertise. We self-appraise a group of getting up, showing how can't be brought in the language of utilitarian knowledge. Cut the next card. Affirm.
Negate.
Negate.
You said Mark. We did not read the last part.
Was a card cut in the middle of it?
No.
Okay.
Hey, sorry, we are at capacity for
that's
fire people.
Paul at 15 was not read?
Correct. All of the teams.
The drive link that says it has all your links is an arrow 404. Can you resend it?
Sure.
Let me just put it in the email.
Yeah.
Cool. Send.
Yeah. for crossfire?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or do you want to stand?
Yeah, we can stand. Get the flows. Yeah.
Your argument says that we should ideally transition from the general to the restricted economy. Has the world? Then yeah. If my basis is wrong, then correct me.
Okay, we say the exact opposite of that. We
Yeah,
say that we
restricted
need to
general.
view things through the lens of the general economy rather than restrictive economy. It's less a transition from one to another. It's more the fact that the general economy exists, but we ignore it in favor of the lens of the restrictive economy.
Where does it exist?
Where does the general economy exist?
Yeah.
The general economy, it's kind of everything. Like energy
Wait.
if I can just explain kind of how it works. Energy comes infinitely from the sun. It powers things that exist. Then it goes towards the phase of maximum utility, where it becomes useful to
I
us
just
as
want to know
humans.
who
for economic growth.
participates in the general economy.
Humans.
Does anybody right now?
Humans, the earth, the animals, the sun.
Okay, so who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Everyone participates in the general economy. It's just that we refuse to look at things through a general economic worldview. It's not that we're transitioning to a general economy. It's
What's
a
the
change of
difference?
mindset.
So
It's
we're
the
in
fact
the
that-
general economy, but we don't look.
You have
things
neglected that we are
general
in the
economy
general
worldview.
economy.
You basically the affirmative neglects that we are in the general
Wait,
economy.
I didn't ask that. I said what's the difference
What's the difference between the
between
two?
being in the general economy and looking at things through a general economic worldview?
Okay, being in the general economy means that energy moves from the sun to utility to waste.
Yeah.
Having the general economic worldview means that we acknowledge those things. Being with a restricted worldview means that we deny that. We believe
Wait,
that it's bad for things
is
to be
there
wasteful,
anybody in
and
the
that
general
and
economy?
resources are naturally scarce. Yes, we are all
Wait,
in the
no,
general
no, I
economy.
didn't finish. Is there anybody in the general economy who does acknowledge the worldview of the general economy?
The negative.
Okay, anybody else?
Probably the people who write our evidence. Other people
so
who read this
it's just your authors and you.
who embrace the general economic worldview. There are other people who believe similar ideas.
Okay, so who? Like name
So
some
who?
categories of people. Like my point is, I don't understand why this argument makes sense if you don't have like history of a world that we would transition to or move between or transgress through.
It's not a question of changing the world. It's the question of changing the mindset. We change the mindset. We change the mindset such that we are embracing a general worldview as opposed to the restricted one. I think I've explained this over the course of the last 2 minutes multiple times. Could I take a question, please?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Let's talk about the umbrella.
Yeah.
Why haven't proxy wars in the past in the U.S. nuclear umbrella triggered this scenario?
Proxy wars in the past. Wait, like name one.
The Korean War.
Wait, I don't think that was a result of like the U.S. nuclear umbrella not being there and a country
It's
like
a
then
proxy war.
and a country then getting a nuke and then going to proxy war because they were once reassured by the U.S. but now weren't. I don't understand the example.
Okay.
I'll take a question.
Yeah.
So in a world where everybody has a general economic worldview, what does that world look like?
Okay. We would say that we are viewing the sun we say you're viewing the sun as a comrade. We
Okay,
view
so
the
what do
sun as
people
something
do
that
on
was
a daily
provided.
They give and they share.
Wait,
We-
well, like what do? Okay, they give and they share.
yeah.
Give and they share what?
We give
Like
and share
resources.
resources, energy,
It's like communism.
excess.
Yeah, like
It would
Not
probably
quite.
be
Alright,
communistic-ish.
type. That's cool.
Take a look.
Start that now.
The closest and which makes it possible to actually consider a transition because you're not solving over energy yourselves. You're not solving energy.
Okay, 54 or 52.
if you take it.
Yeah. Did you ask me different?
No. Order. Alright, no worries.
Y'all said
What word? Yeah.
I'm gonna have to create a new document.
How did I do
We're still waiting. I can show you.
I got it as well.
Oh, you just got it. I'll download it. Just give me a sec.
Here you
Okay.
Wait, I'm gonna send one more piece of evidence.
Okay.
Can I just put it in the chain, or do you want a separate doc?
I'd like a separate doc, but it's okay if you just put it in the chain if that's faster.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I like just downloading it on the hotspot takes time. So.
Okay, you're good. Let me know. Okay, cool.
One take like.
go. 55.
Cool. Order?
It's gonna be counter roll of the ballot.
Okay.
Then it's gonna be the neg can only defend the squo, which I guess you can flow on their K, or you can flow differently.
Where should I put the counter on the ballot? New sheet? Is it like responsive?
Whatever is easiest for you. I mean, you could flow it next to theirs, but yeah. We'll try to signpost it out. It'll be a counter roll of the ballot. Then it'll be the neg can only defend the squo, or like they can't figure out whatever alt they have. And then I guess it'll be like our case for a little bit, and then it'll be down their case. I got you. The counter roll of the ballots evaluate the material consequence of the most probable implementation of the resolution. A. Material consequence is the only way to find which impacts are good and bad. Their reason in their case for the reason as to why we should transition to general economy is because it has good practical benefits, which means we can weigh case and prove to you that if we are better, if we have less material consequences, then we win the round. Second, material consequences is the impact of their critical education. The reason why they say excess is bad because of material consequence, i.e. war and climate devastation, which means we can also link into their, which means our roll of the ballot definitely subsumes theirs. Okay. On the K, the only way they ever have offense in the round is if they can fiat any alt they want, if they can fiat the mindset shift. Because Crossfire proves that a majority of the people do not view us in the general economy, and all their evidence is in the context of the status quo, which means the mindset that they talk about exists right now. So the only way they win is if they can win that they imaginary fiat it. The neg can only defend the status quo of 1. The app only gets 1 advocacy, while the neg advocacy are infinite. If they get alts which explodes limits because the neg can defend anything, makes it big unfair for the pro-fairness and intrinsic to the activity because you need objective evaluation by the judges. Also uneducational, there's no way to prep out infinite amounts of advocacies, meaning there's no way to test the truth of any of them. They could say they feel an imaginary mindset shift, so we should all be friends. This is not what debate is about. But 2, it is against the rules. The NSA agrees. This is not a generalized practical solution because they haven't warranted why the alt is likely. Rules define the activity. If the rules break, even if they win, they are no longer doing public forum, and they follow speech times, which proves that rules are not violent, and that they're willing to comply with this. We will preempt any arguments they make about education. 1, education decreases even if they can't read certain Ks because they don't have it all, because there's no way to engage with the K they read because they can read infinite amounts of alt, which kills all class because we each just talk about separate stances without interacting with one another, which means we never get to test advocacy or have any clash, and it means their education is bad because it's infairly unpredictable and we can't interrogate it or question it or have clash with it, which is the reason why their education is bad. 2, debaters don't do more prep for different alts because there are infinite different types of alts you can read, which A, causes burnout, which is a prerequisite to even participating in debate, and B, just incentivize people to find general stats or just look at back files, which means they do not actually increase education. They might say that lack of alts are less vague, but no, they have a simple burden. They can defend the status quo. This is not vague, this is material, this is what the world looks like right now, and it's damning because it means all of their evidence is just non-unique to their case, which means they have no offense in this round. Okay. On our case, the only way case turns case if they can prove that it's true in every single instance. We will read empirics which proves that our case is true despite the K they talk about, which means even if they are right that it turns case to some extent, it doesn't take out the root cause of all solvency. Because even if we do cost-benefit analysis, we are reading evidence that our arguments can historically happen. First, on China attacks. Y24 writes that in 2012, only 12% of China's course of action were pursued hostile foreign movements, 88% were opportunistic against vulnerable targets. Second, on polar force. You can gut check this. During the Cold War, the U.S. and Russia were the only armies with like nuclear weapons, and they fielded a bunch of like proxy wars during the Cold War, i.e. Vietnam and Korea. Then 3, emissions reduction. American nuclear expansion empirically displaces fossil fuels and reduces emissions. It's scalar. Alder-Jaw and Serini 20 writes that this study estimates the substitution between nuclear and fossil fuels generation in the U.S. nuclear planting openings reduced monthly net coal generation fired by 200 gigawatts an hour, implying a considerable reduction in emissions. They cannot go for a blanket indictment. If we have empirics our argument is true and our evidence postdates theirs, it physically means their evidence cannot account for theirs. There's no way their evidence could predict what someone is saying in the future, which means the K does not, which means the K is not a prerequisite to the app, even if the K is true, it is not mutually exclusive, which means we still have offense in the round. Okay. On the case proper, 1, the first link doesn't make sense. It analyzes cost-benefit in the context of renewables, which the neg would probably have to defend and explains why nuclear can be both good or bad for cost, but we aren't striving towards cost-benefit too. The second link is wrong. Innovation is rooted in utility. It's rooted in not dying, which is a prior question to knowing if anything has utility. 3, the third link doesn't make sense. Again, not striving for utility. We just want people to have eating and food so they don't die, so they don't live in suffering, which is also a prior question. Also, we will turn the alt and say that they still have demand for excess energy because the government always has incentive to produce as much energy as possible to be profitable if they can't put out a fiat mindset shift. Brady 25 writes that in issuing the order for emergency declaration, Trump said insufficient energy production constitutes a threat, but Trump left out wind and solar. Trump wants to deploy more oil drilling rigs, build more pipelines, and bring more power onto plants on the grid, which means that not only needs any impact of the alt and means it's worse because they have all the harms of fossil fuels, but not even the clean energy benefits that we get in our world.
Cool. We'll take that. Okay. 40.
Wait, two more seconds. Make sure you guys are good.
43.
Okay. Order is going to be case starting with, or my bad. K starting with framing. K proper. The app.
Framing being the counter roll of the ballot, or framing being your framing?
Like both. I will extend, or like I will extend my roll of the ballot, and then I will compare it to theirs.
Okay, sounds like their cards.
What? There are cards. Yeah. Let me know when you all get it.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Oh, I
I got it.
let me shuffle around.
Cool. People are good?
Let me shuffle
Okay.
Okay, I am good.
The role of ballot is over the team who most intensely transgresses the bounds that define the restricted economy. Their role of the ballot argument is not about a good-bad difference, and their assumption that it is embeds them in notions of utility. Conceded Timofeva 20 evidence should frame your ballot, given that all of their impact scenarios are inevitable under the restricted economy, i.e. we will continuously reinvest and cause these same impact scenarios to occur over and over again because we are unable to think differently. That concession damns them on all this flow because even if they win that their role of the ballot is true, it is neg on presumption because none of their arguments will ever solve anything in the long run, which means the alt is the only chance at solvency. Then go to the weighing claims. Does not matter. Conceded Solomon and Vauden evidence indicates you cannot compare claims under the lens of the general economy because the different things are all functions of waste, not utility. Should take out all of their arguments because they have conceded the theory of power. Then all of their arguments are contingent on what happens in debate actually spilling over. No warrant as to why doing policymaking role-playing is good. We think it is better to change your subjectivities. Fairness only lasts 45 minutes. However, your subjectivity changes who you are for the rest of your life, which definitely outweighs and is the only way to solve these things in the real world because most people do not have the ability to be policymakers. Then they say that we must defend fiat. One, we do not need to. The alt just proves that their assumptions are not inevitable. Only needs to happen within this round to have material change or to have actual change. Their assumptions were violent and cause issues, which means it is good for us to reject them and independently good for you to endorse our method because it promotes one and shows that you have understood the form of the general economy and embraced it within this round. Even if we only make change within debate, that is more people that fracture this logic which stops the violence that they commit in their daily lives. Then neg should defend alt. 1, education. A, denying K teams alt devastates the educational value. Our framing cards are reasons that like RK is necessary within debate, but lack of any alternative provides no way to escape the cycles of violence we identify. B, they force K teams and those responding to read more about different strategies, which is far more likely to spill fill out. They say that they wouldn't read more, but we have seen empirically that people have, i.e. they have prepped out 4 different positions last night, and debaters talk to us about all of these arguments. Then is fairness. If you really want to think that it's an impact, the lack of alts creates overwhelming vagueness. It's impossible to engage with our strategy if we have not provided one. They also get infinite advocacies proven by the fact that AF teams read a bunch of different advantages. Any number of infinities is still the same number, given that they have infinite advantage ground. That still prevents us from prepping, and is the reason why people still break new. Then they say that like, oh, it is not likely. Yeah. They say that like rules matter, but the rules can be distinguished. Following speech times might be good, but like us people reading alts has not caused anybody to stop reading them. Then again, we have not theoted anything. We just say that it is good to not do what they are doing. Yeah. The DA or the app. 1, they are entrenched within liberalism, dooms their politics by denying the importance of the present human exploration. Only a radically different mode of approaching politics can provide a path forward. Paul 15. Mainstream political debate is ruled by triggering smugness, liberal traditions, zombified by pursuit in the media, avoiding leaving the majority utterly indifferent. Politics tie human beings to the condition of working anticipating against the moment is suppress the present internal moment of infinite freedom must not be denied. Politics designed to fail. Cut the card there. 2, concession of Timothy 20 is damning because all of their impacts are terminally non-unique under the status quo, which should frame your ballot. Then the ships argument. 1, recruitment is an alt cause. Wilkins 25. Navy is most undermined branch of the military. 40% of the subs are unable to sail because the Navy cannot service them. Cut the card there. The umbrella argument. The Livermore evidence concedes the Afghan solve. New Wave reads green. Livermore 2007. Addressing the issues requires increasing the understanding of plutonium and other activities in technology on warming. It's inevitable under the restricted economy. The desire to use energy to accomplish the goals of the affirmative dooms us to the failed logic of petroculture. Heard by 20. To reach regularly complex energy, historical correlation between the Anthropocene and Petrocene comes with a capitalist frame of energy as something spent for immediate human goals. Cut the card there. Go back to the K. All of their like, no, we don't link stuff because they have done utility to try to preserve life is the link, even if life is the end goal, utility is the internal link. Also, they've conceded the carded arguments about how they view climate change as something that we can solve utilitarianly, and how they frame nuclear energy as this one-all solution. Even if petroculture is inevitable, it does not matter.
Mark, please.
Wait, y'all.
Well, we might be at capacity.
Sorry, the fire
We're at the
marshal
fire
has
capacity.
instructed us to not allow new.
Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, some paper on the doors.
For real. In our.
Okay, I'm gonna send. And I'll be ready for cross.
You said it's already sent?
What? I'm going to send.
Oh,
It's sent. It's sent. I just hit the send button. Hey, your computer. Judges have it?
I don't.
I don't. Or
Okay.
now I do.
Okay.
I still don't. Oh, wait. Let me open it up.
Okay, can we do cross now?
Yeah.
Wait,
Is it fine if I sit?
Yeah, that's true. You got the first question.
What does voting for you do?
Few things. 1, it does not endorse your method, which we have identified as violent.
So it's not topical?
What? What?
Like,
No.
wait, are you trying to
Jess,
drive
you
off?
should prep.
Wait.
But the reason why you should vote neg
Okay.
is that voting affirmative causes violence both in round and out of round. Then also you should vote neg because we have identified that the general economy is good and that our transgression of its bounds enables people to explore their subjectivities in ways that change who they are both inside debate and outside of it, which infinitely outweighs all
Wait,
of your
but why
arguments.
does voting neg allow you to do that if you're not fiating it?
Sure, we don't need to fiat it. Our argument is that within debate, like we have not said the US federal government is going to do anything. Our argument is that we have endorsed a mode of politics that is transgressing the restricted economy.
But why do you need to vote neg?
What? Sure, because we have defined the role of the ballot as as voting for people who do transgress those bounds.
But like, what does voting for you do if you are not fiating it?
One, again, it rejects you. You are violent.
Why?
You
Why does voting neg reject us?
Because you lose the round.
But why is that a rejection?
Wait, dude, the way debate works is you vote for the if somebody
no,
makes
no, no, no,
arguments
no, no,
and then we
no, no.
answer them and say that your arguments cause violence, then you vote for us.
Okay, so if we win, your arguments also cause violence, then you vote for us.
Well, I mean, you
Thank
should
you,
make
joint
we've made framing claims that say our violence
Wait,
outweighs
you're just
yours.
using buzzwords. We've also made framing claims that if we prove that war will happen in your world, then you also cause violence.
What? I mean,
Wait, you just conceded a turn on the alts that we would always shift to other forms of energy production like fossil fuels, which is bad because it means
What?
you co-opt all the benefits.
Dude, we have not fiated any argument, or we have not talked about any argument about how we're going to structure our energy. Like, our argument is not about structuring energy.
Yeah, that's
You
the
have-
whole point.
You have conceded that, like, inevitably, when we view energy as restricted, we will inevitably reinvest in other things. But the key thesis claim to decay that you have dropped is that no matter what form of energy we use, only the alt is able to solve by regulating how we get.
How do you get access to the alt if you are not fiating it?
Because you do it in round. We have endorsed a mode of
How do
politics.
we invest in energy in this round? Like which one of the people in this
We
room
have
is
not
investing
invested in energy. You are the one who invests in
Wait,
energy.
So what does voting neg do?
It rejects your investment.
And then what do you do with that then?
What?
If you reject our investment, we're saying you'll invest in other things.
What? What you?
But yeah.
No, you. Okay. The claim that I made is that debate itself will not spill over to change anything in the real world, like in terms of policy making.
Wait, that's not in the K, right?
No, that was in the last speech.
Okay.
But it will not change anything in the real world in terms of policy making. However, what it can change is how we approach, or like how we think about our subjectivities. Your subjectivity in this round was problematic, and we have indicted it.
Wait,
Thus-
you're saying it's problematic
Dude, can
because
I
it
finish?
leads to war, but we're saying your subjectivity is also problematic because it leads to war too.
No. Our subjectivity is not what you have indicted. You have indicted. Okay. You have
Yeah.
said, oh, we need to do increased investment in nuclear energy.
Yeah.
You have not said that sort of either A, the alt causes war, or B, you have not said that we as people have done something that causes war. You in this round have done things that are the root cause of climate change, devastation, and also the way that we view humans in terms of utility, which causes
Yeah.
violence, but that's cross.
Okay, we've taken 52. Wait, that might have been you. No, 52. We'll take prep starting. Oh, wait. You want to... Oh, never mind. Okay, yeah, take prep starting now. Oh, yeah, no, I see.
Okay. I have 214. What do you have?
Yeah, I think we're out. Right?
Okay.
Sorry, my bad. 2 seconds ago.
Order?
1 second.
It'll be like the roll of the ballot debate. Then it will be case. Then it will be
Your case?
yeah. Sorry. The roll of the ballot, the AF, then the K.
Cool.
The case specific order. I'll signpost. Give me 1 second.
Just read off this.
Yeah. Alright, is that we're good? Yeah, cool. Extend the counter roll of the ballot to evaluate material consequences, the most probable implementation of the resolution. It's the only way to determine what's good or bad in the specific context of our affirmative arguments, which circumvents their blanket index. They have dropped no blanket index because it doesn't explain our scenario, because they might critique the general idea of our arguments, not the specific scenario that we have made. So there are no links to the case. They've just said things like investing in nuclear are bad, or like war or authoritarianism are bad, but not specific to our argument. They say we engage in bad structures of utility. Conceded. The only way to determine what is or isn't a good structure is by analyzing the consequences in the context of our arguments. Otherwise, you've made a general claim of the role in the status quo, but not the thing that we say should change the status quo is the affirmative. Your arguments are old, but we have made new ones that you should have had to analyze. They say impacts inevitable. One, again, you don't know that if we don't evaluate the consequences of our impacts, because they haven't analyzed by proxy wars, for example, or climate change trigger infinitely. Second, they've also considered uniqueness. The violence is inevitable in their world too, because war is happening right now since countries proliferate, and we are not on path to meet emissions off the C2 and the C3. Case?
No, read the.
They say debaters change. We'll go for the argument debaters can change stuff in the real world. They've conceded in crossfire and in speech their critical education is bad if they advocate or reject a policy that is good, and they've conceded that debaters can go out and vote, which means if they are not policymakers but they agreed, debaters, not all of them will be. It's the only thing that matters, because every debater has to go and make decisions in the real world of what is good or bad, ethical dilemmas, but not all of them have to policy make. Also, we can analyze subjective thoughts about policymaking or whatever they say anywhere else, but debate is one of the only sites where we can discuss policymaking, making this site critical. The order's a little different than what I said. Just keep on the K proper. Going for the argument that they need to define the status quo. They've conceded. Actually, wait.
Yeah, just read.
Okay. Education. They've conceded that education decreases if they can read the K, because there's no way to engage, which goes all clash, which is the prior question of determining if the K's practice is good or bad. We each just talk about separate stances without interacting, which means we never test advocacy. There's no rev debate, and their education is bad because interrogate their structures, which require questions determining if the K is good. And they've conceded that we have to, if we have to prep out alt, we get burnout, which means people leave debate because they have an infinite prep burden for any single advocacy. You can make off the top. You can read analytics or cards. It's infinite, which is superior to education. It's an independent reason to vote out, because you can engage in the education and fairness of debate if you are not safe and are burned out of debate. Zero snag offense, because a vote for them is a vote for the status quo. But they've conceded the case uniqueness. I'll do the case debate. Actually, no. I'll go for the turn on the alt, then I can do the case debate. They've conceded 100% that they don't fiat the alternative, and the most probable implementation of their world is fossil fuels. Drop. The Trump is poised to do them right now for the climate, or for the news run on case. The government wants control over its people and energy. We've explained why fossil fuels are worse. I'll explain why fossil fuels are worse on the climate debate. Going for climate, not on path to solve climate change now, but renewables. Scale up with fossil fuels, partner with them to solve intermittency issue with both of them, which means they're able to reduce emissions, which is key, because war machines don't scale their impact that turns everything else, because it causes a bunch of people to die and causes other knock-on effects, which cause millions of deaths. Their only response to climate is to cross over the K, but we said no blanket index. Water evidence, post-states their evidence, saying we've read empirics which prove the case. Policy needs to respond to our specific warrants. The nuclear displaces fossil fuels, which cause 90% of carbon, and the climate change will play a role in every mass extinction event on the way. You see that we have skill because our competition spills over, but their case endless wars, whereas the U.S. causes resource wars everywhere else in the world, which explains more than what the K does.
We'll take prep.
Explain why. Because it says that we don't have that much skills. Basically, it's impossible to evaluate what you can see. Directly indict every single place. Always just reproduce the same circles. Yes, but that is shorter cycle. That's what it's every single they say that there is war right now, but there's also war in the world. There's inevitable. Because we change how we view the world, we change how we subject to these. They say fossil fuels does not matter. Fossil fuels are relative, because they can see that when we change the way that we view the fossil fuels, which means we're able to give, etc.
This is the debate about consequences, in which case it's presumption, or it's debate about mindsets, which we have often better ideas.
So you see, go for the fairness one, go for the
Where I say it's easier to prep out one alt.
also go for the argument that they dropped. There are infinite number of paths.
Yes.
Infinite number of paths. Okay, say function. No, just keep infinite number of paths, etc. On their case, extend why we give blanket indicts. Their arguments are it's not blanket, it is specific to their design.
They say we only indict nuclear energy, but that's what the applicant defends. They've defended nuclear energy by saying
The way that energy is structured.
yes.
So, do you want to say that you need to the alt statements and you don't give one? They can see rejecting them is good. They say politics is good. No, it's not, because we endorse systems that are bad.
So we do not endorse that system.
Second.
Yeah.
12.
4 left.
So
6.
Took 43, yeah.
5.
We're almost there.
5 big sets. Presumption framing KF. Probably float presumption on the K sheet.
One more time.
Presumption framing chaos.
Everyone ready? Great. If you want a simple ballot, the Timothy v. 20 evidence says that unless we change our views of utility, we will have war and climate devastation. We view enemies as unuseful people to destroy and resources as something to exploit. That means it's try or die for a shift in mindsets, which only the alternative does. And that also takes out all of their impacts, because it means that warming is inevitable under their mindset, which triggers presumption. The app has to prove desirability, and the neg rejoins it, which is a real reason presumption flows negative, which means the indictment of their subjectivity is all we need. This is conceded the entire round. If you want a simple ballot, that's a simple one. Now let's go on to framing. The role of ballots is over the team who most intensely transgresses the bounds of the defined, the restricted economy, rather than embodying by notions of useful debate. We embody politics of excess enables us to think outside the closed feedback loops of modern policy making that repetitively create the conditions for violence. Let's talk about their counter role of ballot. It's impossible to evaluate material consequences per the spike in Solomon and Vaughn in that Oliver centrifuge, which directly says that there are no scales and that things are not homogeneously expressible, which means that if material consequences aren't able to be expressed in the language through which they can all be understood, that means it's impossible to evaluate them against each other, which means it's impossible to evaluate material consequences. The only thing you can evaluate is who has endorsed the better mindset in the round. The only way they try to indict our mindset is based on material consequences, which means you're voting for us there. But then let's talk about some more stuff. A, they say that we've not gotten into any specific links. We've just talked about nuclear energy. The affirmative is nuclear energy. That is a link to what they've been advocating. Then they say that voters are able to change things, such as by voting. But what they drop is that subjectivity affects your everyday life and lasts a lifetime, whereas voting happens every 4 years. And they concede the Pollitt evidence, which indicts all liberal politics and tells you that it only reproduces the same things anyway, which is a direct indict to voting that they just dropped. Let's go into the no alts onto the we must defend fiat debate. We do not fiat anything. Your ballot does not create a policy, but it does express a mindset that you hold towards the round and towards the topic. The alternative is the mindset that you should be expressing. They tell you that they are unable to prep out infinite alts, but we only read one alt for a K. That's far easier to prep out than if you have no alt and you have no idea what we're advocating for whatsoever. They also drop that we are able to actually engage in greater education by having debates about alternatives, because then you're actually able to pin down what we are talking about. They also concede there's an infinite number of affirmatives and advantages that a team can read, which means that it goes both ways. That means it's just irrelevant. They say violence is inevitable in our world. Let's just extend it to the K. The app is trapped in the petroculture where energy is something to be extracted from the earth, emblematic of a restricted economy where energy is scarce and utility maximized rather than flowing infinitely from the sun. That's Botsky's. Restricted economies reinvest energy into systems of production in unstable ways. The limits of growth turn leftover production to war and climate devastation. That's Timothy v. 20, which I extended earlier. It's a terminal defense. The alt is to become solar. We see the sun as a comrade, connected with us through general economy beyond their restricted use of energy, a micro-political transformation that shifts the way we understand their impacts. That's Timothy v. 22. They say that we are violent. They just talk about what Trump's going to do. That is not, we are not Trump. We are endorsing a mindset shift, which is what you are taking towards the round and their consequences are irrelevant.
Of fossil fuels.
More importantly, you're solving also by indicting the petroculture, we have directly indicted any kind of extractivist form of energy, which means our mindset that you endorse directly indicts fossil fuels as well as any other source. So any argument that we create fossil fuels is relevant.
It's inevitable under their role.
On the affirmative, everything's inevitable under their role. They also concede Huderweiss, which means that no matter what, we're just engaging in the same extraction. It's a pretty clean neg ballot.
Cross.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just be very clear, you do not fiat the alternative?
No.
Okay, cool. That's cool. Into your question.
Sure, Jackson.
Yeah. Okay.
Why vote app?
Yeah, what's the impact if we vote affirmative?
By extinction.
If so,
Or
judge,
prevent millions of deaths from war.
okay, judges sign their ballot.
Oh,
AF.
and wars and stuff.
Okay, sure. Have you won on the AF before?
Have I won on the app before?
Yeah.
Actually, probably.
You were 7-0.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Wait,
No,
no.
like
yeah.
I don't know if
We haven't
this
read the
case or
TOC.
other cases.
Yeah.
I guess last
Oh
round.
yeah, you won on this last
Yeah.
round. Did that prevent millions of deaths?
No, but it was a good like praxis to endorse.
We'll see. Like, I
Why?
don't know. I feel like I could become president and then I could prevent extinction. So.
We've
We've
named
done
one
it
president
with
who's
Oh
done
yeah,
that.
yeah. We,
Like a lot of like Ted
no.
Cruz did debate
Like,
to
like-
solve
wait,
extinction.
Hey, but I'm
wait.
better than Ted Cruz though.
Also,
so.
we didn't have a good impact like the second the round ended because our argument that was dropped is that debaters will not become policymakers, but what they will become is people who have to go out in the real world, deal and absolve
Okay.
ethical dilemmas every
That's a
single day.
warrant for
Wait,
us.
we
Our
agree.
mindset is about ethical dilemmas you need to solve. You've just said that we don't do policymakers.
Yeah,
Agree
and
cross
we have
is binding?
indicted the idea, like you conceded in a speech and crossfire that if you reject a policy that is a good thing, which we've advocated for, it is bad under that mindset.
Our argument is that you're
Wait,
sort
can we
of
ask a question?
yeah, whatever.
Why can the app generate infinite links if we're bound to the resolution, but you can have any?
It's you can read any possible advantage ground,
Okay.
i.e. because
Fine.
PF is whole res,
Yeah,
you've broken like
that
a
makes
million
sense.
different advantages.
That makes sense.
Sure. Let's talk
Broken
about climate. Actually, let's talk about Jackson. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Okay. So you say that we don't become policymakers. In that case, why is policy relevant?
Because we vote.
Because we vote. Do we vote on policies?
We vote on politicians who decide
Yeah.
the policies, and there's some like referendum
have our
stuff.
votes for politicians ever been like the deciding factor in
Wait,
these?
Wait, yeah. Elections are won by a coin toss. Have our votes for a politician ever been a deciding
But I feel like
factor?
what you're
Where do
saying
you
is
think
that like
elections
people
are gonna
shouldn't vote. Like I feel like
We're
you're
not
just
saying people
justifying
shouldn't, though.
authoritarianism.
We're just saying it's
I mean, I don't
probably
think
outweighed by
like, I don't
the
think voting is
people-
particularly relevant to
I
our
just-
mode of politics.
I don't know, dude.
Like,
I
there's-
feel like if we didn't vote, then like
dropped Paula just takes out these claims.
Wait,
I don't
everybody
even-
was
I
like,
don't
"Oh,
even-
we need to vote," and look what happened. So, like.
yeah, but yeah, people voted.
Yeah, my bad. Like, I did not realize that one presidency should indict the history of American politics.
No.
I
but,
think
like,
there's a couple
every year they're like,
presidencies
"Oh,
that
this
indict the
election,"
history
and
of
then, like,
American
They
politics.
elect somebody that's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be good," and then he
Wait,
goes
just
and like
because
bombs
who was
balls out,
elected
like,
is not who we wanted to be elected did not mean that voting did not work.
I thought y'all said earlier that
By
your impact
definition,
was
it works.
also
Yeah,
people
like
who-
voting definitionally
Here,
worked just because if we didn't
like,
vote.
I get we're talking a lot about voting, like, just in case you want to.
Yeah, but our impact is
about
that
voting,
you
it's
have
really
like
not, like,
in round caused violence,
Yeah, but
and your restriction
but
fails.
we're gonna go for the neck and only defend the scope, and we'll say in round you've caused violence because you've conceded the uniqueness.
conceding uniqueness claims are not.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, there's a 375 house.
How many left?
Yeah.
A order. So, I guess it'll be like the counter roll of the ballot, and then it'll be the stuff about like ethical dilemmas, and then it'll be like neg only defends the quo, and the alt's turn. Yeah, I got you. Okay. Counter roll of the ballot debate. We said the counter roll of the ballot, so vote for the team that best minimizes the amount of material consequences that happen. Their frontline and summary is incoherent. They say it can be homogeneously expressed. But if you can't explain this back to me, this is not a warrant. Consequences can be expressed. I.e., if someone dies, then you know they died, and they've conceded that their counter roll of the ballot evidence justifies their counter roll of the ballot simply because the fact that that prevents endless violence from happening, and violence itself is a consequence, which means we get to weigh the app itself. Second thing, we'll go for the ethical dilemma. Conceded from Ramon speaks that we can talk about subjectivity and ethical dilemmas in any space, but debate in public forum. One space we're talking about nuclear energy, which means it's uniquely clean. Second, they make a new backline summary, so I get a new front line. We'll say that voting is more important, even if it's only once in 4 years, because the government holds the most power out of your life. They determine what laws are passed, which controls your day-to-day life, which means voting is the most important. The ethical dilemma stuff doesn't matter though. If I can win that, they can only defend the status quo. We will go for stuff that all can have any method, whereas we're bound to the resolution. Yes, even if the app can read multiple different advantages, they are limited to a certain scope, whereas they can read any method they want. This is bad because one, they can see we can't interrogate the K in the first place, we can't clash, which means we don't know if their advocacy is good. But second, they have conceded that we are more burnt out because there are more types of methods they can read. It is not infinite, which means it's a prerequisite because people don't even engage with their debate in the first place because they get burnt out. On the altar, this was conceded in rebuttal, and it's a new front and it's new response and summary. They have conceded that they're all even beyond the mindset system. They have still has incentive to have a dominion over energy because they want it to be profitable, which is a bad thing because then Trump would turn to fossil fuels for the conceded evidence, which not only makes any impact off the K and is worse because it means you don't get the net benefit of the half. So we win any risk of the half offense, you don't presume. Okay. On case, One, if we win uniqueness, it is try or die for the app. They can see we're not on path for climate change right now, which means even if we also cause endless fires, we're the only risk to solve. They have also conceded our arguments are empirically true, which means the case is not the root cause. They can see we are able to reduce emissions in places like Sweden, which proves the app does have some risk of solving. They can see that the nuclear energy reduces emissions because it's more power reliable and makes renewables intermittent and displaces fossil, which account for 80% of emissions. And they can see climate change causes change to the resource. They've also conceded the way that our arguments spilled over to other countries, which we solve climate change globally, whereas they're only solves the impact in the U.S. specifically. But if you can't explain the K2, you're not going to vote on it.
So that's if you want the value consequences, then both sides have nothing, in which case you negate it. If you want to get mindset, you get
Cool.
the
Framing K. Is that good with everybody? Cool. The role of the ballot is to vote for the team who most intensely transgresses the bounds that define the restricted economy. Rather than abiding by notions of useful debate, we embody politics of excess that enables us to think outside the closed feedback loops of modern policy making that repetitively create the conditions of violence. They say that their stuff outweighs no. Conceded that our form of subjectivity is what actually affects you in your daily life every day outweighs 4 years, and the conceded Pollitt evidence indicates that whenever we vote for politicians, they just reproduce the same systems of violence because they're unable to think otherwise. Dropped. Even if you don't believe it, that should frame your ballot because it is conceded. All of their arguments about weighing do not matter. Conceded that the restricted economy structures things based on how useful they are, but that usefulness is impossible to accurately understand because it does not interact with our subjectivity, which is the only terminal impact in the round. Also, we can't weigh things like headaches, birth, deaths, etc., which means it is impossible to evaluate this argument here. Yeah.
presumption.
Okay. The app is trapped in petroculture, where energy is seen as something to be extracted from the earth, emblematic of a restricted economy where energy is scarce and utility maximized, rather than flowing infinitely from the sun. Restricted economies reinvest energy into systems of production in unstable ways. The limits of growth turn leftover production into war and climate devastation. The alt is to become solar. We see the sun as a comrade connected to us through the general economy beyond the restricted use of energy. A micro-political transformation that changes the way that we understand their impact. This is a easy presumption ballot. Even if you think that they are right about the role of the ballot, they have conceded that they always view energy in the same way, which means we can never stop extracting. We will always do the same thing. They say we have fossil fuels, but we stop viewing it the same way. Create in-round changes that actually prevent us from viewing fossil fuels the same way, and their nuclear energy will always be extractive, embedded, and just push out the violence elsewhere. Presumption is so clean, it is not try or die because neither side can solve even if they are right, which just means you vote negative on presumption. Then the no alt stuff. 1, we have not fielded an alt. 2, they have conceded that they also get infinite apps. We have to link to their argument, so our alt needs to actually negate theirs and provide an alternative, which means we do actually meet their argument, and it is better to expand subjectivities. Conceded that our arguments last a lifetime. Fairness is only 45 minutes. Good riddance. Okay, do you want to go on a walk? Can I go get some water?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm also gonna get water.
I'm gonna spin around.
Yeah, I'm gonna take your checks. I'll be here too, bro. Don't worry.
Can y'all go ahead? Sure, yeah.
right outside. Can you,
Yeah,
or like
okay.
Jackson, can you get me?
Oh, is it still recording? Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, whatever.
Do you want me to like put it on y'all? No?
I'm
Okay.
good.
Okay. Thanks for that. I got you.
This room is really stuffy. Really? Yeah, I have no idea. No, they just finished.
They haven't been like publishing the
Yeah.
decisions on types of street.
Are all decisions in?
Decisions in?
Yeah.
Okay,
It
let's
says
go find
complete.
Oliver.
Here, do you wanna like?
He's coming.
Okay. It is a 2-1 decision for the affirmative. And I was the squirrel like fucking always, so I can go first. Okay. At the end of the round, I think the biggest issue on my ballot is the role of the ballot debate that's going on because that seems to outplay everything else. I have 2 interpretations left standing at the end of the round. I have the transgression interpretation and the material weighing of the most likely implementation of resolution. Material weighing of the impacts of the most likely implemented version of the resolution. The negative, at the end of the round, neg is saying that the affirmative is developing an extractionist ideology, which will just keep reinforcing the same problems over and over again. And the affirmative team is telling me that the consequences can be expressed, and there are material and measurable ways to like end violence, so they get to weigh violence. The issue is I'm not sure the backlining interacts with this like serial failure like feedback loop that the negative team is making or articulating in the round. So like even if we can see material measurable ways to end violence, the negative stance is that like politicians or people in power, whoever like has constantly been looking at these and like we're not seeing the solutions that we should be, or they always fail, right? I think the AF needs to address the serial failure argument more in depth. I could have cross-applied the empirics argument that like we can look to history to see that things have been done, but this wasn't like necessarily. It was on the K proper rather than this like roll of the ballot sheet I had, so I guess it was tough for me to do that like cross application for you. So yeah, I think serial failure allows me to kind of just vote there and not necessarily parse through the rest of the flow, but I can also give like if you guys have questions on different parts of the flow. I can
That's like one quick question.
Yeah.
So if we had like made where the empirics respond to a little bit cleaner, then it would have been like a
Yes.
little bit. Okay, that
Yes.
makes sense. Yeah.
I was thinking probably earlier.
I just think signposting would have helped, like
Yeah.
signposting on the roll, like, because for me, like, just as a judge, in case you guys have me again, like, the role of the judge, role of the ballot almost always uplayers everything else because I think teams always make that analysis. It's not like I'm going to vote on something you guys don't say, but I think that means that the majority of the debate time needs to be spent up there because it's like where judges
Right.
usually default.
Yeah. I was also confused about my time.
No, yeah, you're good.
My side posting was nothing. Yeah.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go next. Not gonna lie, like, this round is pretty confusing for me, so, if my decision could be wrong, my decision could be right, I don't really know. I think it's right, but yeah.
I think 2-1 is very indicative. for the
Yeah,
round that we
agreed,
just had.
100%.
Yeah.
I ended up voting on the argument on the uniqueness debate that Trump is supposed to do fossil fuels, and they will get worse, which is why I choose to weigh the material consequences of the app, and I buy that nuclear energy is better for climate change. I do buy that the debate affects daily life and votes matter, which I think is to an extent why I evaluate the material consequences of the resolution. I also think the point about the inability to interrogate the K if we don't know the advocacy is good is pretty clean, which is another warrant why I evaluate the material consequences of the app. And yeah, like I think that the app is more material, I guess.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why do you believe debate affecting daily life is a warrant to evaluate material consequences of the policy? And where is that implicated as a warrant?
See, unfortunately, I think that like because of the lack of interaction on like the impact level, I think that I do probably have to like intervene to a certain extent on this.
Okay.
And yeah.
Wait, I just don't think that they
How do you handle presumption?
I don't presume because I think that the app has material benefits.
I just don't think the claims that you're making on the top shelf level about like from both sides on whether or not like policymaking has an impact or like debaters have an impact on policymaking or whether subjectivity matters more. Y'all are both making claims that are true and they're not interacting. Like you're telling me that subjectivity every day outweighs on scope, and you're telling me that the impact that they will have on policymaking, whether as a voter or a policymaker, will outweigh on magnitude. I need more analysis than that. That's the deepest we get. I'd probably grant both of y'all some offense off that, right? The problem becomes when we're losing on a turn on the Trump stuff, and there's not a response in rebuttal, which is probably where I'm voting, and also on the counter roll of the ballot, where the extension I get of the spike in second summary is not clear enough for me to be like, I don't know what homogeneous expression of the scale of like marginal benefits of the app or material benefits of the app. Like I don't know what that means.
I think where y'all misstepped in this round is you were like just like extending like very complex words and very complex lit without like thorough enough explanations, maybe in cross or maybe like in the speech itself, right? I think yeah, that's my opinion.
The problem is this round became about too many things in the back half, which is why there was a lack of warrants. Which is why it's going to be confusing to evaluate. I probably vote the same way Brooke does. Like, I don't know. I probably lean even app on the like roll the ballot question, just because I don't know what the roll the ballot looks like after I get the responses on preventing endless violence from happening and Anish gets up in the summary and literally says, if you don't understand what homogeneous expression is, then you're probably not voting on it, which is true. I don't understand what it means by the end of the summary.
I think that was a damning line for you guys. Like I think you like it once they say if you don't know like what homogeneous expression is, then Final Focus needs to get up and be like, all right, let's break this down because they're acting like no one understands what's going on.
What I will say is I understand the thesis claim of the cat. Like that's clear by the end of the round. I just don't think the roll of the ballot is as clear as it should be.
What impacts are you voting on for the app?
I'm probably either voting on the offense that's generated off your K by like the uniqueness that they have read on Trump, or I'm voting on I'm voting on the app's uniqueness from case outweighing off of their roll of the ballot. Because they're telling me to value material benefits. And if I grant their counter roll of the ballot offense, then they do this. That's the whole point of their. That's why they're framing you out of the round.
But like, what solvency do you buy? If it's about material benefits?
I don't need like, all I need to believe is that like any investment has any
Trier
impact on
overrides
material
terminal
benefits.
defense.
It's not terminal though. My point is
It's
I
like the
grant both of
empirics
you
make it
offense.
not similar.
There's no, because you're not interacting on the background. It's just like, there's no warrant on it. It's an assertion. Good round, Joe.
Yeah, good round.
I don't
I don't care. I mean, it's fine. Do whatever you want. Yeah, hurry up.